We are sharply 5 minutes late, which means nothing, because we are planning some adjustments, but we'll have this morning and the whole day a very exciting opportunity to discuss specific themes that are relevant for the ocean decade and that compose the backbone of the PROASA, of the program for the South Atlantic and Antarctica. And we'll have 4 panels, 2 before lunch and 2 after lunch. So we have about 1 hour and a half for each one. And then we have a coffee break in the middle of the morning and in the middle of the afternoon. And in the end of the day, we have the opportunity to have the comments and the messages from Professor Zago and also from the Ambassador of France in Brazil, Emmanuel Lenin. It's really important because next year, as you saw, we will have the United Nations Ocean Conference in Nice, and there will be a very important launchings. One of the launchings is the IPOS, the International Panel for Ocean Sustainability, and we are trying to, together with France, to strengthen this movement, to foster this movement so that it will be representative of all the interests related to the ocean. But without delays, I would like to invite my dear friend César de Castro Martins from the Oceanographic Institute of University of São Paulo to moderate this panel, introduce our panelists, our invitees, and start this very important discussion on clean, healthy, and resilient oceans. So César, please, the floor is yours.
Yes. Yes, good morning, everyone. It's a nice pleasure for me to come back to this stage. 10 years ago, I'm here, and the situation in the past is one of the most important in my entire career. And now, I would like to thank you for Alex and the FAPESP to the invitation to stay here today. And I would like to say some words about my profile. I'm currently a full professor in the Oceanography Institute at the University of São Paulo. My main research fields are related to marine organic geochemistry and environment pollution. My studies have contributed to recognize signs of anthropogenic activities in different places worldwide, including South Atlantic, Antarctica, and Siberia, that are under high and low perturbation and under different climatic conditions. Our group is expert in the analysis of specific organic compounds that can be used to markers of changes in the coastal and the polar ecosystems. This session is about a clean, healthy, and resilient ocean. After my talk, I will present all of the speakers. Introducing this team, we have 10 challenges listed in the Ocean Decade. In the context of Ocean Decade, 10 main challenges are proposed, and the challenge 1 and 2 are related to this session. Challenge 1, understand and map land and the sea-based sources of pollution and contaminants and their potential impacts in human health. And the ocean ecosystem and develop solutions to remove or mitigate them. And the challenge 2, we are interested to understand the effects of multiple stressors on ocean ecosystems and develop solutions to monitor, protect, manage, and restore ecosystem and their biodiversity under changing environmental, social, and climatic conditions. Based on the 10 challenge, we have 7 Ocean Decade outcomes describe the ocean we want. And specifically for this session, we are interested to propose ideas to have a clean ocean where sources of pollution are identified and reduced or removed, and a healthy and resilient ocean where the marine ecosystem are understood, protected, restored, and managed. Based on the main actions in the context of ocean decade, specifically to the South Atlantic and Antarctica, and related to this section, we have a limited projects contributions program considering in relation to the all ocean basins. You can see contributions is around the 20 actions, but you in total ocean basins you have more than 300. This is a question because you need to develop more actions considering the Antarctica and the South Atlantic. And in order to drive what do you need to do in the terms of challenge one, in the environmental chemistry perspective, you are in this panel, we have a lot of perspectives, different fields, biologists, and other contributions. This is the environmental chemistry contribution. Since August last year, a group of worldwide specialists in marine pollution has discussed several aspects to beat and understand marine pollution. A white paper was produced and will to be presented next week in the Barcelona conference. The main findings or recommendations in this white paper is really propose, for example, utilization of existing data and the generation of new data for key pollutants, sources, pressures, and different regions of the world. The second requirement is to propose a global network to establish Sentinel site to understand the pollution, increase the capacities and methodological improvement, including the high quality data, structure protocols, lower detection limits, comparison between field and laboratory experiments. Also, the generation of a global marine pollution census and the production of global maps of marine pollution. Equity in the data availability between North and South, and increase the investments in pollution control programs. This is the a government, the relation between academia and government could be increase this requirement. Some examples: the prioritization of areas, pressures, and pollutants. The aims proposed by the white paper focus in well-known pollutants and identify point source pressures. You need to focus in heavily polluted coastal areas in monitoring the history neglected regions, especially in Global South, open and deep ocean. This paper of Halpern, 2008, is a good example of how all of the parameters can be integrated, producing maps, and that help to identify places when you need to reinforce our studies. Long-term time series is important to the identification of baseline conditions and temporal trends. It's important to recognize when the pollution started in the past and when the status that I need to reach in the future to get the natural conditions. And the long-term monitoring data in the strategic and positional sentinel site. Antarctica is important in this field because it is one of the last preserved places in the world. And for example, in the south, you don't have well organized a lot of parameters and a lot of sites that can be describe the increase and the identification of the baseline condition. This paper consists in only data from North Hemisphere. You have a lot of parameters, different sites, but in South Atlantic, you don't have this kind of data organization. And to conclude, it's important to have a global, regional, and national database. The organization of this data from different places and different scientific groups can be helped to establish best practices for sample collection, analysis in the strict quality control, and the organization of this data can be reporting and sharing in the future. This is an example from the history in the South Atlantic, when you can compare data from hydrocarbons with different places in the world, and you can use this kind of a comparison. Obviously, each place has specific characteristics, but you have a kickoff to compare data from one single parameter in different places in the world. I finished my talk, and now I would like to invite the other speakers. We are start with Cristiana Simão Seixas. Cristiana is a research at the Environmental Studies and Research Center from University at Campinas in Brazil. Her research interests include environmental governance, social ecology, resilience, and transformation, integrated conservation and development initiatives, traditional ecological knowledge, and ecosystem services and transdisciplinarity. At the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem System, she co-chaired the IPBES Regional Assessment for the America, and also she co-chaired the first Brazilian Marine Coastal Assessment on the Biodiversity and Ecosystem Service by the Brazilian platform. Thank you, Cristiana.
Thank you, Marcelo. Thank you, FAPESP, for inviting me to be here, and Alexander Turra, which sometimes I call Alex when I'm not angry with him, and sometimes I call him Turra, because we have a long time friendship. So thank you so much for being here, and I will try to bring some thoughts in terms of building this new program and future calls. So I'm not introducing myself as I've done by Marcelo, and I start with some conceptual alignment, because we talk about resilient ocean, but what is resilience? And I think that's Alex invited me to come here because, like, over 25 years ago, I was doing my PhD in social ecological resilience in coastal zone, and I talk about that, and people said, "What?" So over this last 2 decades, it became a very common word, but this has not been always like that, especially in the natural sciences, thinking about socio-ecological resilience. So we understand resilience as the capacity of a system, and it could be an individual, a forest or an ocean, a city or an economy to deal with change, and to continue to develop as a system. It's about the capacity to use shocks and disturbance, like a financial crisis, climate change, stock depletion, to spur renewal and innovative thinking. And this term about resilient thinking embraces learning, diversity, and above all, the belief that humans and nature are strongly coupled to the point that they can only be understood as a socio-ecological system. So I've been working with this approach of socio-ecological system over 30 years, perhaps, and we need to work thinking that these systems are coupled in scale as well. So we have to think about actions at the global, but at the local and at the individual level as well. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. So socio-ecological resilience is the capacity to adapt and stay in the same system, structure and functionally mainly, or transform to a new domain, and that comes from the complex system thinking. So when I transform, I change think structurally, deeply. So it's the capacity to adapt or transform in face of change in socio-ecological system, particularly to unexpected change, in a ways that continue to support nature and human well-being. So this concept of transformation is the buzzword now that you find everywhere. But what is transformation? What is transformative change? So according to the IPBES, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, transformative change is a fundamental shift-wide, system-wide reorganization across technological, economic, and social factors, include paradigms, goals, values needed for conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, long-term human well-being, and sustainable development. So, in order to thinking about a resilient ocean, we have to take into consideration these concepts. And moreover, we need to think about governance, governance of the ocean, governance of the marine social ecological system and the coastal social ecological system. So I have been working in the past 2 decades with this concept of marine and coastal governance. And I bring here some definitions because I think that are important to point the elements we have to think about, bring those elements into the PROASA calls. So governance is a self-organized process, encompass multiple social actors and their respective values and interests in decision-making and in the implementation of actions for integrating environmental conservation and development. Values, principles, and objectives of environmental governance are negotiated. In environmental management, we have clear objectives. In governance, we are all the time negotiating those objectives, values, and principles. So they vary according to the participants, which are the actors that enter and leave the processes. This governance process, it may take place within a formal institutional structure, like in policymaking, protected area management council, but also in informal arrangements, like coalitions, social movements. So it involved diverse organizations, from government to private sector to non-governmental organizations, as well as citizen and civil society organized at different levels, and from the local to the global, as I mentioned before. So the other dear concept that we have been working over the last 10 years has been nature's contributions to people. Like it took almost 2 decades for the term ecosystem services to get into the policy here in Brazil. I remember doing the research, like I was part of the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment back in the early 2000s, and there was no policy that any legislation that has the ecosystem services term back in middle 2000 years. And once we finally got that, there's a new buzzword that is the nature's contribution to people. But why do we need to enlarge, to expand the concept of ecosystem service? Because ecosystem service has been criticized for being too much utilitarist, which it is, and that's fine because that was the purpose of creating it. But also that it did not bring together the diversity of values and knowledge system into the concept. So nature's contributions to people bring this diversity of knowledge, and the Italian which talks with the hands, so have to bring the plurality of values, the plurality of knowledge systems to understand how nature, how the ocean benefits human well-being, benefits economies, benefits society as well as a whole. So, and not all benefits are, not all contributions are positive. We have also some negative contributions. And going back a couple of steps behind, when I was talking about resilience, I also want to leave this message. Resilience is not something good. Resilience is a property of the system. It's not good to build resilience always. Like a degraded area, a polluted area is quite resilient. And what we want to do is to break the resilience to transform into a clean area and a clean ocean. So we have to be a little bit how do you call that? Cautious, thank you, Alex, when we are using these words in calls and programs, okay? So, all these concepts, why I'm bringing this? Because now the question we need to answer, and that was, I understood that was posed to me, is what is the program we need to build a clean, healthy, and resilient ocean, right? So I will bring here some thoughts based on all the research I've done over the years. So we need a program that fosters resilient thinking, that is based on the understanding that the ocean is a socio-ecological system. So we need a program that focuses on interdisciplinary science. We need a program that fosters good governance of the marine and coastal systems, that is, that engage with multiple actors in building and co-producing knowledge for decision-making. And a parenthesis here, knowledge co-production is another buzzword that has been used, and not all science needs to be co-produced. But we can create a very good disciplinary science in dialogue with society, listening to the society. It doesn't have to be all knowledge co-produced, but we have to engage with society. So transdisciplinary science is a key word nowadays, to do science different than the way we have been doing. So that's the Einstein saying about we're not changing the problems we created with the same thinking we created them. That's the thing. We need to create a new science, a way of doing science different to help solving the problems. Some of them, we scientists help to create it with our disciplinary and our mechanistic visions of how the world functions. We have to bring our share of that problem to be responsible a little bit for that as scientists as well. The science of the parts, I mean. So we need a program for transformation. And remember the transformative change? We need to do things different, not a little more or a little less of what we have been doing so far. We need to get out of our comfortable zone. We need to change and expand our views. Otherwise, we won't be able to reach this transformation we aim for, a clean and healthy and resilient ocean. We need to change structures, and that includes academic and funding organization structures as well. And when we talk that, is about we need to think how to better build capacity within our organizations and how we can prepare the young generations to deal with the complexity and the challenge of this. As I said yesterday several times, and the UN has been saying several times, this triple environmental crisis of pollution, biodiversity loss, and climate change. So we need to change our practices, right? So we need a program also that promotes equity and social environmental justice. That's what transformation is about, changing structure. We need a program that promotes support, pluralism, and diversity of values and knowledge systems. We need a program that builds respect and reciprocity relations between humans and non-human beings. And as well that promotes learn and adaptive actions. So, we need a program that promotes more collaboration and less competition. And this is my last slide, or the one before the last one, so don't worry, I'm getting there. Science has been fostered a lot through competition, and we have advanced knowledge through competition. That is a history we have. But it's now time to change our thinking and really foster more collaboration. Focus more on human resource development. Focus more on knowledge, more on the process of knowledge building, and less on the scientific products per se. So the process is what matters most when you want to change structures, when you want to change values, when you want to change principles. And if you want to innovate, you have to take risks. So we cannot just keep doing more calls in the same way we have done over and over. So we need to innovate. So I just want to finish saying that I thank you, FAPESP, for supporting this São Paulo School of Advanced Science that is starting in a couple of days in São Luís do Paraitinga with I'm co-chair, which is transdisciplinarity for transformative change. We are hosting this school, bringing researchers from young researchers from 30 countries, and I'm looking for the success of it. And again, thank you, FAPESP. Thank you all and all the funding agencies which support my research over the 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Cristiana, for the nice presentation. The next speaker is Viviana Alder. He is a researcher of the Argentine Antarctic Institute and Consejo Nacional de Investigaciones Científicas y Técnicas, CONICET. She serves as a professor of environmental ecology at the Faculdade de Ciências Exatas e Naturais of the University de Buenos Aires. Her work covered marine plankton of the southwestern Atlantic and Antarctic region, with emphasis in the community structure changes driven by local and regional environment process. Her current research is mainly focused on transitional Antarctic coastal ecosystems of the South Orkney Island. This presentation will be focused on the Antarctic marine ecosystem, their role within the context of the clean, healthy, and resilient ocean, biodiversity, and the environmental response to the teleconnections and local drives. The urgent need to sustain long-term research programs address different spatial and temporal scales, and what you can do to archive the goal in the framework of a cross-disciplinary disciplinary collaboration. Thank you, Viviana.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Sago and Alexander, for your invitation, and also to Pampa Azul, whose representative is present here, who proposed me to be here, I imagine. Well, I will start. Why I select the Antarctic system? Because for me, if I have to choose a representation of the Antarctic system, this is the best picture I found in the literature. The Antarctic system is the cold core of Earth with its own particular metabolism. It's essential for the functioning of our planet and our lives. It plays a vital role in the regulation of global climate and marine biological productivity, and also the sea ice extent, we know, is constantly changing in consonance with the fundamental block of life, which is phytoplankton. And as we know, there are cascading effects on the trophic web of the system. My first question for this presentation, because I'm not a specialist in pollution, was, which is the meaning of clean ocean? Which is the meaning of healthy ocean? And clean ocean means free of any type of pollution reaching from any pathway. Main pollution types are eutrophication, which is probably not the case for Antarctic, contaminants, underwater noise, ocean acidification, and marine litter. And in blue, I have pointed out those pollution types that probably are associated with the Antarctic system. And in terms of healthy ocean ecosystems are those exhibiting normal form and function that is demonstrating sufficient organization, vigor, and resilience to allow the ecosystem to exist, thrive, and evolve as a natural system. Everything, its results depend on the scale of the observations. At the global scale, and I have Cesar shown the same, exactly the same, we are in synchrony, and I'm a biologist, Antarctic area, the Antarctic region is denotes at the global scale because of the very low human impact. And probably this is attributed to the governance which is an example of successful international cooperation and due to special measurements. And this is the unique region we have to understand processes and functioning of ecosystems and to rethink action measures and mainly to generate innovative solutions. But in the Antarctic system, not everything is pristine as we suppose, yeah? And we have a past and a legacy related with the human exploration, with discoveries, with resource overexploitation, invasive species, and pollution. And now, this is related with two other main processes like tourism, which is mainly a market in the region, and global warming, which means acidification, changes in species distribution, cryosphere loss, sea level rise, and other processes. Everything is depending on the scale of observation. At the global scale, waters south of the polar front represent near 5% of the world oceans. It's the less polluted region, and just a tiny fraction, less than 1% of the Antarctic continent has been affected. There are invasive species. We are subject to fisheries, but they are under control. And air is relatively free of microbes. But at a regional scale, we have another warning signs. For instance, last year was the lowest year with unprecedented low record of sea ice extent. And this is a critical indicator of health, stability of polar ecosystems, as you can see here. Another warning sign is at regional scale is human activity, which now is frenetic in coastal areas, confined to small places, ice-free places. Another point is, which is the meaning of One Health in the context of Antarctic ecosystems. One is public health issues, which has become increasingly critical for the operation at the base stations, and because we had the first case of highly pathogenic avian influenza, but Antarctic community was not prepared for this situation. Another problem are non-native species. There is a poor understanding of the rate of non-native species arrival and establishment, and this is due to general lack of monitoring. What about microplastics, scarce evaluations, the lack of standard methods and monitoring, and we know the impact on pelagic, benthic, sublittoral and intertidal zones, and the cocktail is increasing with the extreme weather events. And because of this, we are realizing that Antarctica is fragile and vulnerable environment that may be subjected to considerable stress and damage in future years and decades. And the last probably is the tourism Antarctification, which means for the ocean and coastal areas, biofouling, which is the transport of species, and pollution, black and gray water, microplastic, black carbon, human noise, and underwater noise. And if we can see here, the peak was in 2022 in number of visitors. The tourism in Antarctica must be effectively and proactively managed with decisions based on science and informed by best practices. And what about biodiversity? Antarctica is home to numerous endemic species, and conserving Antarctic species is the interest of the whole humankind, and climate change is the most critical factor for biodiversity conservation. And we have to take in consideration that the geographic distribution of marine species is changing, and some is going to deeper waters, others are moving to the south, and there is an ecological time lag to detect these movements, the moment of the dispersion and distribution. It's premature to present hard facts on the resilience on Antarctic systems because the time of observations in general are too short and more time we need to generate robust results based on scientific continuity. The area offers the potential to engender greater levels of collaboration between governments, institutions, and scientists to identify issues and opportunities for collecting data and observations, to collect data for multiple objectives with a systematic, holistic view, and this also increases our motivation because we have more time to understand process and changes. And as an opportunity, I would like to mention the Almirante Iriza icebreaker from Argentina, which is a multi-purpose ship, which his primary function is logistic, but if we can consider it, this ensures temporal continuity and sailing almost for 5 months. And this, the maintenance cost is not for scientific institutions. We have, with this ship, a privileged access to scientific research topics because we can navigate in waters covered by sea fields or to tackle topics and geographic areas or periods with profuse sea ice coverage. And the IRISAR always offer us the opportunity to sample in additional sites related with the Argentine scientific stations, permanent or temporary, which this ship is one of the functions. We also had previous experience working on board of the icebreaker, doing continuous measurements or high-resolution samplings, covering transects from Buenos Aires to the Weddell Sea, for instance. And after the fire the ship had in 27, there was a renovation and reconditioning of the ship, and now we have 8 laboratories to work quite comfortable on board. We have the ship has an oceanographic winch for heavy and large equipments, and another CTD winch, but we don't have any cable, no CTD and no rosette. We have problems with equipments, not with the physical place. We got funds from Pampa Sul to work on this. We are still working in our country, trying to get some equipment to work on board. In this way, maybe we can have a vision with multiple comparisons between environment and life in the South Atlantic, comparing subpolar and polar ecosystems, sea ice cover and ice-free waters, west and east Antarctic Peninsula, coast versus open waters, or krill and fish larvae in like natural resources and in relation with blue economy. And maybe after analyzing this, we can also contribute to the global biodiversity framework 30 by 30. Molto obrigado.
Thank you one more time, Viviana. Next speaker is Jérôme Faure. Jérôme is a researcher at the CNRS at La Rochelle. He is a marine ecologist and ecotoxicologist whose research primarily aims to better understand the impacts of multiple environmental changes, such as pollution, warming, or melting sea ices on polar marine ecosystem, particularly through the studies of seabirds. He is a scientific delegate for the Arctic and Antarctic at the CNRS, Ecology and Environment, and coordinates the Polar Task Force of the French Research Alliance for the Environment. Thank you, Jérôme.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's all right. Technical issues. Anyway. Good. Great. So thank you for the introduction and good morning, everyone. I'll quite some echo on what Viviana has presented and also focus my presentation on the Southern Ocean and the Antarctic with an ecosystem and a biodiversity perspective. Because we know that Antarctic and the Southern Ocean are home of a unique biodiversity that has evolved for very extreme and stable conditions, but which are now facing a major modification of the environment and which are threatened by multiple changes in their environment. And to illustrate this, I take the example of the iconic penguin species, which are distributed all over the Antarctic and the Southern Ocean, but which are facing now multiple environmental stressors like changes in sea ice concentration or changes in the sea surface temperature, which modify their habitat, which modify the distribution of their resource. They're facing changes in pollutions like plastics, which will affect individuals, and also facing intense fisheries activities, which both compete with the birds in terms of food resource, but also brings a problem of bycatch. And as a result, about 50% of the penguin species are endangered or vulnerable, and more than 60% of these species show declining population trends. But what's happening in the Antarctic doesn't stay in the Antarctic, and there's a connection between the Antarctic and the rest of the globe, not only because of physical processes like the global thermohaline circulations, which connect the different oceans and participate to the regulation of the global climate, not only because of the melting Antarctic ice sheet, which contribute to the sea ice rise, the sea level rise at the global scale, but also because species like this Arctic tern are connecting the different part of the world. Here you have the migration of Arctic terns between the Arctic, between Greenland, going through Brazil, Argentina, up to the Antarctica. So any effect on those species in one region will directly affect the entire ecosystems globally. And so in that general context, the Southern Ocean Task Force, as part of the UN Ocean Decade, has gathered and worked on this regional action plan, which aimed to provide an initial roadmap to strengthen the links between science, industry, and policy, as well as to encourage internationally collaborative activities in order to access existing gaps in our knowledge and data coverage. And so this action plan is identifying knowledge gaps and scientific priorities to address. And I think that in the context of PROASA and future calls for projects, we should not reinvent the wheel and make sure that what has been identified here is well covered. So I won't go through the priorities developed in this action plan, but I want to highlight a couple of them. The first one is about evaluating the extent of pollution in the Southern Ocean by implementing pollution data coverage and monitoring. Just very briefly, because everyone knows about that, but the human activities, the increasing of the population, the technological development of the combustion of the fossil fuel are emitting large amounts of pollutants, metals, organic pollutants, plastics, which because of processes of condensation, evaporation, deposition, and because of atmospheric transport and oceanic circulation, will be transported over the large scale towards the polar region and Antarctica, where this pollutant will be deposited and could affect the system. But if we look at a monitoring program, so here you have an example for mercury, one of the most studied contaminants from the Global Mercury Assessment, the UN Environment Program. And what you see on this map showing the different monitoring projects is the spatial imbalance of this project. And actually only 23% of these monitoring actions are led in the ocean. And if we look closer, only 4% of this ocean monitoring are based in Antarctica. So we definitely need to develop and extend our understanding of the distribution of pollutants in these regions. And this can only go through international cooperation. And I give you here this example on penguins again, where 9 countries came together and worked together to assess in a coordinated manner the contamination of these species all around Antarctica. And so this international coordinated effort must be developed if we want to have a global and comprehensive picture of the distribution of contaminants, and if we want to identify hotspots or cold spots of contamination in Antarctic and Southern Ocean ecosystems. And only when we know that we can address some other priorities, like what are the key driver of this hotspot, what are the impacts of this contamination on the species, on the population, and in fine, on the ecosystem functioning. And we know that contaminants are affecting individuals. It could be as endocrine disruptors. I just show you an example here where several studies have suggested the impact of PFAS, for instance, on the thyroid hormonal system, and so potentially with impact on the metabolism, the thermoregulation, the reproduction of individual. It can act as a neurotoxic, affecting the behavior, essentially the foraging or reproducing behavior of the individuals. And ultimately, all these individual effects will have population effects. And here you have an example on 2 Antarctic bird species where you see the population growth rate according to the contamination of the bird, and you see that the more contaminated they are, the more decreasing are the population trends. But as it has been mentioned before, understanding the impacts of the contaminants on the biodiversity, on the biota is essential. But we have to keep in mind that individuals are facing multiple environmental stressors. It can be ocean acidification, it can be the rise of the temperature, it can be the melting of the cryosphere. And so we need to have this multi-stress approach to see and to understand, to fully grasp how these different stressors are combined, are acting synergistically to impact the wildlife. Again, I just echo on what has been said. Something that I think is important also to have in mind is this, the emergence of new viruses for these populations. And as it has been mentioned, the avian flu, with a really strong outbreak a couple of years ago, which affected not only birds, but marine mammals. And here you have a report showing where this avian flu has been detected, and clearly it also shows that we need a coordinated international effort if we want to further understand what is the circulation of these viruses and what are the impacts and what we can do to mitigate them. Something I don't show here, but I would like to mention also, is the importance of the long-term monitoring and observation programs, because only with the long-term monitoring we can fully understand how ecosystems, how species are responding to modification of the environment, but also what is the effectiveness of the conservation actions that are set up by the different countries, and what is the effectiveness of the mitigation action aiming to decrease the emission of contaminants in the environment. To finish this presentation, I would like to come back on what Gilles has been mentioning yesterday and give also a few more information about the polar science in France and in the national context, to remind you that research activities in France are shared between public research organizations and universities, and more than 600 publishing scientists have been focused on polar regions in France over the last 10 years. And among this research landscape, the CNRS is a major operator in polar research, with more of 10% of its 1,100 collaborative research units involved in polar research, which represent more than 250 permanent persons. It also relies on the French Polar Institute, which provide projection capabilities for fieldwork at both poles in an international context, and also the French Oceanographic Fleet, which support an open ocean activities both in the sub-polar North Atlantic and the sub-Antarctic Indian Ocean sector. And so I believe that international collaboration is not only about exchanging scientific skills, it's also about being able to exchange infrastructures. And so the CNRS is partner of several national polar infrastructure through the French Polar Institute. Like in Antarctic and Subantarctic, two research stations, the Dumont d'Urville station, which is a coastal station, the French-Italian Concordia research station on the Antarctic plateau, as well as the scientific traverses and the logistic convoys between Dumont d'Urville and Concordia on the East Antarctic plateau, and over 40 refuges and research laboratories distributed in the French subantarctic territories. There's also two polar vessels, the Astrolabe and the Marion Dufresne, and a third vessel, an icebreaker, has been recently announced by President Macron and should come in the coming years. And it also includes three research aircraft shared by the CNRS, Météo France, and the CNES within the national infrastructure SAFIR. And so, as Gilles mentioned yesterday, I believe that there is possibilities here for cooperation and exchanges of infrastructure as part of the PROASA program and future projects. And the last thing I want to mention is we've been talking a lot about the UN Ocean Decade as an overarching framework for PROASA and the coming projects. But we have to keep in mind other international initiatives that could be a great framework for PROASA as well. And I'm thinking particularly about the 5th International Polar Year with the International Arctic Science Committee together with the Scientific Council Committee of Antarctic Research, which jointly announced the new International Polar Year for 2032-2033. And here you have a first timeline for the coming years. And what we can see is over the next years, until this 5th International Polar Year, there will be more and more projects under the umbrella of this international initiative. And I think that it also gives a great framework for PROASA. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, all the speakers. Now the presentation session is closed. Now I will form the table to start the discussion about everything. What do you want? I would like to invite again Viviana, Cristiana, Jérôme, and also I would like to invite Gilles Pinet. Gilles is a director of research at CNS in Lyon and Paris. He's working on terrestrial diffuse pollution control, especially nitrogen and phosphorus. They transfer to the river networks and the consequence on the coastal eutrophication process. He has mainly worked in the context of intensive agriculture catchment. Gilles will contribute in the discussion. Probably I expect better your voice for the next few days. Okay.
So I would benefit from the invitation. Sorry again for my voice. It's not getting really better, but thank you for inviting me. I will not make a presentation per se because I'm not a specialist of marine environment. I'm a freshwater sailor, but as taking a continental side of the perspective of our Earth and listening to what has been said this morning, I think there's a couple of thoughts that came to me, and just to summarize and maybe start the discussion among us. And the first thing which really struck me is that clean, healthy, and resilient ocean, is it a goal or is it a dream? Mm-hmm. And this is really, really striking. We have heard this morning that the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 of them, I was just counting the steps here. There are 17 steps, by the way. So would you consider those staircase separately or all together? And in fact, going up and down, you need to use the 17 of them. And in fact, when we listen to the marine issues, we deal also with the 17 goals for sure. And what we heard this morning, that there's a lot of issues related to the strongly interlinked challenges and complex issues which require a really pluridisciplinary approach, but also the land-water connection for the issue which are raised, but also the connectivity within the sea. But this being said, I'm just wondering, how long do we need to measure the global change to trigger a change in the way we use or misuse our planet? I mean, how many of the IPCC and IPBES conferences and reports do we need? This is really a challenge. I mean, I don't know, I can't count anymore. Are we at the 27 COP or 28? Shall we go to the 51, to the 120? Where are we? And that came back to me to the discussion we have here today is, it might be a bit provocative in a way, is that what can we do collectively to make a difference? I mean, Last week, we had a meeting with Alex, and he was as provocative from his marine side to my terrestrial environment. And I'm just returning the question is, what will make us make a difference in that long-term monitoring and putting more and more evidence of what's going on, which is really a disaster, and yet we are just continuing. So is it only continuing measuring that would be necessary? And another key question, and really it's a trigger for science and collaboration, is what makes the South Atlantic and Antarctic so unique, apart from being less studied? And I think this is a question we should keep in mind. Of course, as a scientist, we always say we don't know enough to take a conclusion, but we know enough. We have enough information. We have enough evidence. It doesn't mean that we don't need to continue collecting and measuring and proving more evidence. We really need to change paradigm. And there was several presentation this morning which said, we have to take a risk. We have to be creative, because so far we are not going anywhere except going worse. I can just give you as a few 2 minutes an example from my side. I've been working for the last 30 years on diffuse pollution control and eutrophication of the coastal areas. So as a freshwater man, I would not, I look at the sea, but I don't go to the sea. But nevertheless, we of course influence a lot these environments. And for the last 30 years, we have monitored and we have provided evidence of the catastrophe of the eutrophication. Nothing happened. And you know when it started to happen that something changed is when one lobby or two lobbies were hampered to continue their business by the eutrophication. In other words, the agricultural lobby was pushing, by the way, having more intensive agriculture thanks to the soja you produce in Brazil just to feed our pigs and cows, which if you look at the global thing, it's a nonsense. Nevertheless, it started to trigger changes when people from the tourism sector or people from the mussel beds development said, we can't have business anymore. And putting those lobbies within each other was the starting point of talking. Scientists were not listened. We haven't been listened. I lost my voice not only these 2 days, but for the last 30 years trying to convince that things were changing for the worse. Nothing happened until we really reached the boundary. And that's a key issue. And I think keeping in mind also with the discussion we will have later on is that the points that were raised as well is that what is the ecological time lag? We don't really know. Are we at the tipping point? Are we already past it? Or are we waiting for more crisis? We don't know yet. Nevertheless, we know it will happen. And the point, and the second point, which I think is really relevant, is the trajectories. What will be the trajectories of our ecosystems? We don't know. We are probably sure, and that triggers the resilience concept. Are we really resilient? Maybe not. Because we probably will not come back to the same place where we came from. The ecosystem will change, and it will not go back to what it was previously. So this is another challenge we have to face collectively. So this is a few just thoughts that I gathered this morning listening to these very exciting presentations, and I thank you very much for your attention and invitation.
All people in the table would like to comment the Gilles questions? No? They are open to discussion with the audience. Questions?
Good morning. Thank you very much for the very interesting talks. I have a question for Viviane about the touristic activities in Antarctica. Do you think that, I know that happens maybe in a limited way, but do you think that the touristic ships could be recruited to do monitoring on specific sites, for example, maybe by carrying scientists or by training crew, and maybe including the tourist in this monitoring activities?
Yes, I think we are in a period of optimization of resources, and we have to go back in the number of ships also sailing in water, or at least in Antarctic waters. I think if these kind of ships can help to monitor places, but they also, I don't know exactly how is the regulation for these gray waters, black waters that came from the ships, those kind of ships. Yeah? So they have to do a dual work to monitor first their own ships, which is the impact. This is my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very interesting question. We had the problem also in France with the tourism and how we could use the touristic boats. We have a big shipping company who is really pushing us to and to take scientists. The big issue that we had to go through our ethical project in CNRS is to say we have to also to be careful that they don't use the scientists as an excuse to do even more tourism. And that's a big challenge that we are facing today, is that going to places that they say, oh, that's good for scientists, and by the way, just polluting more the environment. So that's a kind of a two sides of the coin that needs to be considered.
Hello, good morning. My name is Gustavo. So it's also, thank you for the presentation. It's always nice to have a morning like that out of the university and listening to you. And the challenge that you posed me when I tried to connect all the presentations is whether we have enough parameters of social and environmental parameters to be monitored. Because if you talk about monitoring, everybody comes to mind temperature, salinity, mercury, penguins, which are the social ones that has to be connected to these ones. I mean, if we want to change the paradigm, we have to make the cause-effect relationship between the two systems. And I take this as a challenge to myself, to think together with you guys. So thank you very much.
Yes. When I talk about monitoring, some people said monitoring is not science because most of the studies produce a lot of data, monitoring, but nothing innovative, new perspectives, new approaches, but monitoring it's important. And when I read the white paper about the environmental chemistry, I saw the continuous monitoring of substance, contaminants, parameters that has been monitoring since 50 years ago. And now for the next 10 years, you need to continue monitoring because you don't have idea exactly what can be happened in the future. We know about what happens now based on this result. And when we talk about monitoring, it's interesting because how the development more and more parameters is necessary, but you need to put all of these parameters in the box and integrate these parameters. And in this field, the social is, for me, for example, as a chemistry, it's difficult to contribute to collaborating in this integration. But yes, monitoring is important, and I think that monitoring is science too.
Well, I'll try to get some of what has been talking before. Very colleague here too, regarding we need, perhaps we don't need more knowledge, we need to better use the knowledge we already have. Of course, we, as scientists, we always want to produce more knowledge, but as a program, we should also consider build capacity in science policy interface. I think that's a key issue that we need to address, even to develop a science about science policy interface. How to better influence policy, how to better influence action. And when I say policy, I'm not talking about government policy only. I'm talking about policy that takes place within any corporation, any organization, and within our institutions as well. And we don't have history, especially here in Brazil. I can say that, I don't know about France, but I suppose Argentina is about the same. We don't have a history of monitoring policy, assessing policy. We create policy, we implement policy, but we don't learn about what functions, what does not function, and how to improve policy through learning. So policy evaluation is an area that has to be considered as well in terms of, I think it was Alex who mentioned about, is the conservation programs being effective or not? How are we going to do that? We need to assess that, right? So we have to consider. Also about monitoring, we have the idea that monitoring is always scientists going there and observing and get information from nature, but in the database, and so doing those assessments. But we forgot sometimes the social dimension of monitoring and evaluation. And we can both include the social variables, of course. So when the colleague was presenting about the tourism ships in Antarctica, I was like, wow, what perhaps would be that the potential, the economic potential, but the social potential and the ecological potential that the tourism can bring to the Antarctica. So we can think about social variables, socioeconomic variables as well in monitoring. But more than that, we don't need to do monitoring by scientists. Citizen science is something that isn't poured more and more over. And as Mariana mentioned about the ships going to Antarctica, citizen science could be used a lot to help this building these knowledge bases for decision making. So yeah, I think, just one more thing before I conclude is we're talking about perhaps we don't need more knowledge. What we need more is using the precautionary principle in our decision making.
It's a very interesting question because most of the society is not on the sea. And that's one of the issues as well, is that how do we connect people to places which are far away from where they are living? And this is a really important question. In other words, how to explain the complexity and interconnectivity of systems where you're living thousands and thousands of kilometers and you'll never see the place we are talking about. And that's a really big challenge also for scientists in the social realm, because we also need to connect to the people and see how we can change their perception of our globalization, which is very difficult for a human being to understand that his or her action might have really a lot of consequences. And in terms of policy, also the big issue we have is that most of our policies are very siloed. And at least in France and Europe, even we try to disentangle, to connect them. Often we will have a given policy which can be contradictory to another one. And that's also a big challenge that we need to face collectively.
Thank you very much for a very interesting panel. I would like to know if in your area or your projects or your institutions you have any lessons to offer for interdisciplinary work. Because I guess for this science and policy interface or for monitor social and environmental parameters, we need ever different discipline, like this policy effectiveness has been studied in another area, in public policy, international relations, or social science, economists, communications. And normally we are mostly talking among natural science. So how we, within PROASA, how we create an interdisciplinary environment that welcomes other disciplines and help them to interact their knowledge and perspective, because I guess maybe we can answer some questions that we have and still remain to be answered, but maybe has been answered in other areas that are not here now. Thank you.
Maybe I could say a few words about interdisciplinarity. It's a pain. Interdisciplinarity is a pain. Everybody would say, oh, it's a great thing. It's a real pain. You have to go naked with your own discipline, with your uncertainties, and try to discuss to another colleague to say, I don't know. And not everybody is ready for that. So that's the main challenge. It's a pain, and it's not an objective, it's a tool. And once we understand that shift, it makes a huge difference. So that means it's not the alpha or omega or whatever, it's just that it's a necessity because of the complexity of the questions we have to address. And for doing that, that means not everybody is ready, and not everybody will ever do that. And it shouldn't be taken as a bad thing. It's just a fact. Some people can run fast, some can swim, some can do interdisciplinary things, some cannot. And some can do in their period of career and not in another period, which is also to be considered. This being said, there are several ways where we could try to trigger interdisciplinarity when it's really necessary. The first thing is to share tools. It might just start like this: share a boat. And ocean science has been more interdisciplinary than the terrestrial one for a long time because they needed to share the tools. And being 3 months in a boat with colleagues doing something else, you talk to them, you discuss, you start to share your questions, your uncertainty, and that helps. But also sharing a place where you will work together. Doesn't mean that you will really work together, you'll work next to each other to start with. But then it's very important. And one thing that we triggered, and that was a European program on international training network, they used to have projects where they would finance a cluster of theses to tackle a complex problem. And why a cluster of theses? Because we would take theses which are disciplinary. But the different disciplines would address one part of the global problem that you have set up, which is a very much more comfortable for the student, because a student who can be bidisciplinary is often very difficult. Career-wise, it's often a disaster, because you're never as good at one and the other. You're good at both, but not top. And most of the evaluations are disciplinary, to admit that. Very difficult to assess interdisciplinary research. So, but having that cluster of theses of different disciplines, you somehow make a cluster of students who will look at their one part of the problem from their angle of discipline. And of course, will share with the others their findings, but also their questions. And in a way, it has been quite productive. And it's also very interesting, both for the students who look at their discipline from a different angle, and often are very much more creative, even in their own discipline, just because they are in the realm of a complex problem to address. So that was one tool that at least Europe has been used, and that we were using also for the international research center that we started with the Sao Paulo, is having this idea of trying to address some complex system and put cluster of discipline PhDs to that. One example.
More questions? Okay, thank you very much, all of the speakers. Thank you once more to FAPESP to promote this event. And now you have a coffee break, but Alex, you talk some words. Thank you very much for attending this session.
To put together so different things, so healthy, clean, and resilient ocean, and understanding, as Christiana showed us, what are the definitions, the concepts behind this. So this is a challenge to harmonize our understanding of these concepts. This is really important. And understand that we have integrated system where biodiversity has a very central role, but not alone. It has a very important role to gather people. So that's why Christiana talked us about the socio-ecological system. This is really important. But when we talk about biodiversity, we are talking about different levels of organization, including ecosystem level. That's why we are talking about ecosystem services and functioning, because we have to integrate biodiversity, organisms, with the functioning of the system. So it's critically important to integrate all these aspects to have a better and holistic understanding of the functioning of the system, to understand how we are being able to change it, to propose measures to change it. And this is a thought I would like you to have during the break. That feeding your stomach and also the brain, and because this is really important. And as Gilles said, we are in a learning process. It's fantastic. Interdisciplinary is a pain, yes, of course. And being outside the comfort zone is also a pain. We need to exercise ourselves to build trust among us. In a way, we are comfortable to share what we know and what we don't know. And this is a huge challenge. So think about that in the coffee break. We are coming back in half an hour to the next session on productivity and sustainably used ocean. See you. Bye. Well, we are back. So acknowledging our colleagues that are online, this meeting is being broadcasted, and it's important because we have material to be used later, huh? Because most people perhaps couldn't have the opportunity to be here, so it's really important. So without delays, let's start the next panel. I would like to invite my dear friend Leandra Regina Gonçalves from Universidade Federal de São Paulo, Unifesp, which will be the moderator of this panel dedicated to a productive and sustainably used ocean. So Leandra? Okay.
Hello, good morning. So as Tuha just said, I'm professor from Institute of Marine Science from Unifesp, and I'm here today to moderate this very interesting panel on productive and sustainably used ocean, which is a big challenge because we have to use the ocean but still keep it healthy and clean. So I guess we have this challenge ahead of us. So I will have a very short introduction just to inspire our talks and our speakers today and give some thoughts that we can discuss later in the Q&A section. So today we talk about something big and important, and we have done since yesterday. And the idea here is to discuss how to produce science and promote a productive and sustainably used ocean. The ocean, as we all know here, is a giant living part of our world. It gives us food, provides us leisure, well-being. It guarantees that also we have energy, and there are some energies that we haven't used yet. It guarantees also the coastal communities have their livelihoods and their way of life, and this is very important as well. All this we call the nature contributions to people, as Christiana just explained in the previous panel. And we have the responsibility to take care of it and to produce knowledge about, and we have to keep it healthy and full of life. And in order to reach that, we have to produce the best science we can. And I guess this is the biggest challenge we have here in these 2 days and also along our career and professional lives. And this is part of what the Ocean Decade, a big plan to make sure we use and conserve the ocean wisely without harming it, and still we can use it. If we want to pursue this pathway, we need novel approaches, and maybe it's because of that Alexander Tuha invited us especially to be here today. What kind of novel approach we have to discuss? Because I was wondering, and I was talking with some friends during the coffee break, you know, university has buildings, but the world has problems. So how we will overcome these barriers? How we overcome those buildings to deal with the problems the ocean gives us and the problems we are facing it? And we need to consider all forms of knowledge. We have to create an environment where local and traditional knowledge, community of practice, and scientists are comfortable to work together to find the best way to keep oceans healthy and productive. We need to embrace the different, and without that, maybe we will not reach the role we have here today. Now, there's something else we need to think about as a scientist. We have to make sure everyone has the right to speak. We have to embrace equity, and we have to give them a fair chance to help and benefit from the ocean, and we are failing it so far. This means pay attention to who gets to speak and who makes the decisions, especially focusing on women, different races, and people from all sorts of backgrounds. Because we need all sorts of views and perspectives to solve the complex problems we have in our ocean. Alex mentioned yesterday that we have one ocean, but we have embraced all different perspectives we have in our ocean. And these different perspectives will matter a lot to build the PROASA we want to live long and for the future. In this panel, we have an interdisciplinary panel, which is quite good, and I just learned that. And we have to discuss how to grow and develop, how to advance in a blue economy that has justice and equity as a basic principle. how to advance this blue economy without exacerbate existing inequalities, because we are discussing this in Brazil, and we have a huge inequality to tackle on for the future as well. We need to discuss the social environmental conservation, because only conserve is not enough anymore. So we have social environmental conservation to keep oceans protected and communities having their rights for their own territories. And I know this is a very big task, and I know this is a lot for asking, but I believe we have bright minds in the room that we can find a way to work together and sail this ocean together. So thank you very much. So I will invite our first speaker, Professor Débora Martins de Freitas from Universidade Estadual Paulista, Unesp, and I will ask you to introduce yourself. Thank you, Débora.
Good morning. My name is Deborah. I'm from Bioscience Institute, Unesp. And I'd like to thank you, FAPESP, for the invitation, and especially Tuha for the organization and for bringing us here this morning together. I'm an oceanographer by background, but I think since I started understanding more about the oceans, more I understood that we need to understand and interact with land and with what we do in our coastal ecosystems and with our coastal environments. I learned from a mentor when I still doing my undergraduation that we can manage people and that we can manage our activities. So that's what we have to manage, how we can manage and how we can do this balance to have a protected and a conserved environment. So I guess that my talk today is much more exchange of ideas with you guys than any more technical issues. Although I bring you some numbers as a good researcher, we have to present some numbers to talk. But I guess the key challenging here is really to talk about the science we need for the ocean we want. And I think that we have, in many aspects, science that we need. Some speakers before already talked about the science that we have, but we need to act in some aspects, but we have some gaps. So have this umbrella and all these objectives that we have within water and in the oceans that we're going to be talking today. And I split my ideas into basic talks. They are all related to target 14th, but they interact with all the other targets, as you can see, and you saw in previous conversations. I'll talk a bit about blue carbon and the importance of coastal environments for a healthy and sustainable ocean. We have been talking previous talks about the importance of have this integration between ocean and other environments, and I see that's quite important. And I'm not a specialist in invasive species, but they are quite important in terms of biodiversity integrity. And we are facing some topic and specific points here in São Paulo coast that I give you of some examples of what we could consider in terms of studies and implemented this for ocean and Antarctic studies as well. So for those here in the audience who are not familiar with the terminology blue carbon, so pretty much is the carbon storage in vegetated coastal ecosystem, including tidal marshes, mangrove forests, and seagrasses. So these ecosystems, it have a great capacity of sequester and store large quantities of carbon, and both in biomass and in sediments. And I bring here the attention for mangroves because it's the ecosystem that we have here in the Brazilian coast, and it provides huge, important services for the Atlantic Ocean and for all the coastal environments. So this picture here is just to really illustrate how much carbon a mangrove tree can absorb and store, compare, for instance, to other terrestrial forests. So the capacity of this environment, especially in the sediment and in the roots, they are quite important. Although researches and understand about the importance of these ecosystems in countries like in Brazil, it's South America, it's still very new. So the idea is to see and to understand the importance of have this kind of services integrated and see the importance for a health, productive and sustainable oceans. So to bring you some numbers, we know, and the literature vary quite a bit in terms of how much carbon this ecosystem carry storage compared to terrestrial ecosystems. Some talk between 2 to 5 times more than other terrestrial ecosystems. So I have here a study that brings you some number in terms of mangrove capacity compared to other rainforests and other coastal-related ecosystems, and you can see by yourself that the difference is quite huge. Brazil is home for the second largest mangrove area in worldwide, so globally. In terms of numbers, this means 9.3% of the world's mangroves and 8.5% of the global mangrove carbon stocks. This is an illustration here of a recent study for global mangrove priority areas protection. I can provide you the references later on, but just to illustrate that there's some studies and quite recent studies going on in terms of priority areas for coastal protection in terms of blue carbon ecosystems. So this is an illustration. I think that Alexandre is not here, Alex, but he was one of the involved in this very great illustration that show that's not just carbon. Coastal ecosystems, they provide ecosystem services for a huge variety of species and for human survival. So the potential and the connection with a health and productive oceans, I think it's quite clear, but needs to be more explored in future studies. So some numbers to give you importance of critical storage, including ocean coastal habitats. In terms of carbon, global carbon, we are talking about 83% of global carbon cycle circulate through the oceans, and great part of this carbon capacity depends on this relation with coastal and health ecosystems as mangroves. So this is just some of important organizations that are working in terms of blue carbon studies, and I think that's a lot of scope for PROASA engage in this kind of connection. But of course, we have these ecosystems at risk, as not just in the sea. So we have, unfortunately, here as some numbers that talk about the capacity and the problems that we have in terms of mangrove loss throughout the history. So we need to keep, if we need health and resilient and productive oceans, we also need to look for these interactions between our oceans and our coastal ecosystems because they are highly dependent to each other. And here in São Paulo, we are here, and I bring my knowledge and a bit of my thoughts today here to our state because we are in São Paulo, so we need to know a bit of where we are. So our backyard. Here is just just for you to illustrate the distributions of state park and in red mangrove distributions that we have in São Paulo coast, so that you can see that they are not equally distributed. So just to give you some ideas what we have, and here it's in terms of numbers. Brazil has around 1.2 million hectares of mangroves, and in São Paulo we are talking about 25,000 hectares, representing in terms of the Brazilian ecosystems. Here on the top, we have our central coast of São Paulo. That is a huge challenge for coastal ecosystems and, of course, for marine related ecosystems because we are talking about huge developments. We have in São Paulo, in Central Coast, the biggest port of Latin America, the Port of Santos, and you have a huge challenge to conserve and protect these ecosystems in face of this need for coastal development, so important for the world economy. And in the back, we have the south portion of São Paulo state, when you see more pristine and more preserved ecosystems within the Ramsar Convention site. So how we gonna manage in the same coast, this different kind of characteristics is also changing on how we're gonna be managing our oceans. So that's quite important for us to look at in terms of management options as well. And here bringing even a closer look our situation in many possible other parts of the world. Here in Santos, we have also different, I would say, different realities in terms of management. We have in the estuarine systems a different sort of occupation, problems with no regular occupations, sharing area with mangroves. So it's quite important because, as you know here, most of you know our systems, they are connected. So all what happens in our estuaries keeps happening in our oceans. So keeping eyes in this environment and thinking about how we can manage this in an integrated way, it's quite important. And here is our other side. We have two sides in the same place, in the same context. So we have one side struggling with space between mangrove conservation and need for development and for adaptation. And in the other side, in the other phase, we have the challenges of managing developments and built infrastructure for changes like sea level rise that's already there, and it's already placing many problems that you're already facing now. It's not in 10 years, it's now. I'm talking here, this picture here, it's from 5 years ago. So we are facing these problems much more faster, as you know, that we are expecting and as in the models are talking about. So in terms of governance, our governments, especially locally, they are not really prepared, I would say, still to deal with these kind of problems, and these kind of things we need to think about when you think about a big project as PROASA as well. And bring a bit what we are doing as a kind of sort of inspiration. I'd say as a researchers, we do our business as usual and just a keep of articles that as researchers we do have to publish, and you have to show what kind of research we are doing. I'm not talking any specifics about that, but what we are talking here, and one of the Leandra's mentioned, it's about the importance and the connection of work between social, ecological, but also between science and society. So much of we are bringing in discussions now, we have to pass this for future generations. So what we are doing is working and proposing that I think that's quite important in terms of PROASA as well, has some lines of research to do working with in terms of community literacy. There's already something been done in terms of the ocean decade. Ronaldo is here and know about all the school, the blue schools approach. So our oceans, they are not really inserted in our school system. So we need that to be more present and more discussed. So this is an example of where we have the challenge, and we're going to be starting next week, working with kids from vulnerable communities to work with them, for them to understand the environment that they live, what is the importance. And many of these children that live mostly a little bit far away from the coast, especially, they have never been in the ocean, so they don't really need, they don't really know the connection between the ecosystem that they live, that they are surrounded, the importance of keeping that ecosystem for the benefit of the oceans, because they have never been in the ocean, even though the ocean is just 5 kilometers from their house. So this is a big change, and I think that insert this kind of knowledge and education, it's part of a long project, a long-term project like PROASA. I think that we have to think about education and have these issues within the education system, that so far we are still starting with this issue within the ocean decade. I try to finish quite soon. This is just some ideas of what we can do. I talk about carbon, and this is an idea about the carbon that has already been developed in Antarctica. So there's a lot of scope to study carbon and blue carbon in Antarctic systems. There are some studies already been doing. I haven't found many or specific Brazilian institutions doing this kind of study, but I think that's also an opportunity for PROASA to look at and study carbon, blue carbon research in South Ocean and Antarctica as well. And here I'm going to finish. It's just 2 examples. I think one speaker before already talked about the threats of invasive or non-native species. And I'm bringing here 2 examples that we have in our region that can serve as an inspiration why this kind of topic needs to be included in such program like PROASA. So this is tree of a mangrove tree recently discovered by some colleagues in an ecosystem in Cubatão. It's a city close to Santos, so not that far from here. So it's a species for India, Malaysia region. It grows very fast. There's a lot of seeds, and we don't know still the impacts that this kind of species can have in our native species. So we are talking about development and problems with pressure in terms of using our systems and protect our systems for connections and the protection of our oceans. But we need to look for terrestrial and some species in the coast. So there's this recent species that we don't know in the impact that is going to have in our native species. And this, for those who are not from Brazil, this is the State Marine Park Laje de Santos, like 40 kilometers from Santos City offshore. And it's an introduced species of I would say sun coral, but it's a quite invasive and aggressive species that we still don't know exactly how to deal with. And it's already threatening the biodiversity of this system that's quite isolated because it's, as you can see there, it's sort of in the middle of nowhere, but it can spread through oceans circulation and ballast water and other issues. So just some examples that we do have to explore this and consider this within PROASA context, I guess. So I finish with the challenge, and we have talking here about novel technologies, and this is a challenge, I guess, for us. We do have science in many fields. In order, we have to identify the gaps to do this, but I mean, develop novel methodologies for collecting accurate field data modeling for validation, and I think that's long-term data is exactly what you need, especially when we're talking about the science of the ocean. And consider a lot of factors such as extreme weather. The remoteness of this ecosystem is also challenging, and the dynamic of oceanography features that we have to take in account compared to other environments that we had so far. So sorry, it's just such short time that we have for a lot of information in the head, but we're gonna be open for discussions, and I'm available for talk with you guys during the day if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Deborah, especially for showing our mangroves area. We had the opportunity to visit this area with the Sprint FAPESP that was funded from FAPESP, and Professor Paulo Sinesgali, Professor Alexander Turra, and myself went there with Geraldo and his team to visit the area, and it's very clear how can we conserve that area, which it really deserves for mangroves and for everything, but especially for the housing in vulnerable environments we have all around. So we were discussing these social dimensions of blue carbon. I think it's a really good point. So having said that, I'm gonna invite here Professor Wagner Valente from Universidade Estadual Paulista, and I will ask you to introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank my friend Alexandre Turra for the invitation and FAPESP for the opportunity to be here and to exchange some information with you. Every professor and scientist like to exchange information, thus I am very glad to be here. Thank you very much. I am Wagner Valenti from São Paulo State University Aquaculture Center, and I'm also enrolled with Marine Institute of São Paulo State University. During the past 20 years, I have worked on developing sustainable systems of aquaculture and developing methodologies to assess sustainability, considering the three pillars, environmental, social, and economics. And we have developed a system that was accepted by European Union, and it's very glad because FAPESP is part of this, help to finance this. I am an editor of 2 journals of Web of Science during the past 20 years also, and my principal field of research is bioeconomy and nutrient cycles and systems of production aquatic organisms. And in this session, we are talking with the productive and sustainable use of ocean. I think that you can focus in different ways because ocean is a source of a very strategic resource, such as living organisms, minerals on the bottom, minerals below the bottom, and energy and a lot of other natural resources. But because of my field, I will talk about the blue economy and bioeconomy. And first of all, I would like to define this because it's difficult. Most people have difficulty to understand what is this. And the blue economy comprised all the activities that have a part in the ocean and, for analogy, in the freshwater also. And blue economy is very important around the world. And the output in 2022 was $1.5 trillion, not billion, trillion dollars. Thus, blue economy is very, very important around the world. And it includes all the activities and include or live organisms as part of these activities. And as we saw yesterday, that was showed by Turra in the other lecture, only 1.7% of the research spent, or the research in the world, I spent in marine subjects. And in Brazil, it's 60 times less, 60 times less. It's the proportion of the all that spent in research. Thus, we are behind of others, and all the world need to take attention to the blue economy. And as part of blue economy, we have the economy based on living organisms. And like fishery, like aquaculture, but please note that not all the activities related to living organisms are bioeconomy. The concept of bioeconomy was a new concept that was introduced by European Union and some developed countries, and it, of course, focuses on living organisms, but not only this. It's necessary to have innovation. It's necessary to have a restorative or at least conservative process and sustainable process. And this sustainable process is based on the circular economy, not in linear economy. Linear economy dominated the planet after the Industrial Revolution. Why? Because we have a few people and a large amount of natural resource. But now the situation changed. We have a large amount of people and we have a scarcity of resource. And thus, we need to replace the linear economy that is take, use, discard, to circular economy that is take a few, use, reuse, refix, and recycle. This is the principle of circular economy, and bioeconomy is totally related to the circular economy. Thus, not all fishery activities is only bioeconomy. Let's continue, because my time is gone. Brazil is a mega diverse country, and of course, biodiversity. We have a big biodiversity in the land and in the ocean, and it should be converted in social and economic development in a sustainable way. And when you look for the ocean, we have a lot of important research. And if you think in the food security, we have food and raw materials as seaweeds, fish, crustaceans, mollusks, and major food for human beings around the world. And as we live in the occidental part of the world, we did not realize the importance that the ocean food or seafood have to the food security of people, like in Asia. We have new bioactive compounds, like a friend asked yesterday. Marine organisms are source of biological active molecules to be used in biotechnology process. And of course, that PROASA should focus on this, should focus on production of food, but should focus on producing raw material and mainly bioactive compounds. And ornamentals, everyone put ornamentals here. But when we think in research, people say, oh, ornamentals. Ornamentals is a billion industry worldwide. And most of the species are not produced, are captured, are catched in the environment. This is a big challenge and a big opportunity. New energy sources, like from algae, macroalgae or microalgae and other sources, we don't have time to explore more. But look, if you need to exploit the biodiversity, and you need to do this with careful to preserve and conserve the biodiversity, we are talking about two processes, fisheries and aquaculture, because we need to catch the organisms or we need to raise the organisms. There is no other way. Thus, we are talking about fisheries and aquaculture, and we need to have a strategic exploitation, because we have some challenges and opportunities and constraints in Brazil. The main challenge is that we have large biodiversity of aquatic organisms, large biodiversity, but small populations of each species. And this is totally different for North Hemisphere. And unfortunately, we exploit our stocks exactly equal it was stocked in the North, when they have big populations in small biodiversity. Thus, we need to shift the paradigm. We need to break this paradigm and start to adapt the fishery activity to our reality. And you need to do this based on scientific knowledge, of course. And there is a large cultural, social, and economic diversity around the coast of Brazil, and it should be considered. There is no unique solution. There is different solution for each part of the country and for each people. And to showing some experiences that we have as we asked us, talking about fisheries. We have a project enrolled in the biotechnology network of marine biotechnology. The study of bycatch of demersal fishes. There is a lot of studies of bycatch around the world, a lot. People try to use these organisms as food, but it's not works. But if you want to biomining and look for biomolecules, molecules biologically active, we are changing the paradigm. We are introducing the circular economy concept, because at about 10 kilograms of fish and invertebrates are died in the ocean by each kilogram of shrimp. Thus, it's a tremendous waste. And we have a big amount of biomass that can support the industry to extract the biomolecules. And in this project, it was interesting because we attended TRL6, is the technology readers level, and TRL6 means that we are prompted to introduce it into companies. To put, we have developed in the systems joined to fishermen, and now we have determined a lot of biomolecules, but there is a huge of more, and there is a big field to PROASA invest, but we have extracted some kind of antioxidant substance and also some others. And as was talked here yesterday and today, it is very important to enroll the community, the people. And in this research, we have enrolled the fishermen. And it's very important to produce material for the society. And it's not difficult. For instance, here, this one is an app for mobile phone that the fishermen and all the people can identify more than 400 species that came in the bycatch only using the mobile phone, without internet. That is very interesting, and can be used for schools, in the high school, for tourists, and including for the fishermen. This is an example of fisheries. And now we will talk about sustainable aquaculture, that we need to use restorative aquaculture, integrated multi-trophic, multi-niche aquaculture, not destructive aquaculture, because aquaculture can biomitigate a lot of problems, including pollution, and can produce organisms that was extracted that are overexploited without create problems. And we also need to use systems of low carbon footprint, like this project that was in that we are in TR8. TR8 means that it was in the marketing. In the past year, we produced 5 tons of macroalgae, native macroalgae, in the south of Bay. And this you can say the people that are working with all EPI, they are people from the native community, a community of fishermen, and mainly women. And you can see that we can produce a wage for these people that is equivalent to the DAS minimum salary, that is $1,200 today. It's possible, it was demonstrated by economic analysis, and we can reach different SDGs, not only the 14, as Turras very well showed us yesterday, that the ocean can affect most of or all the SDGs. This project is very interesting. We have also a booklet for the society. Here is other kind of booklet, and I bring it today so you see that it's possible to perform a research and divulge the research to the community. If someone wants, I can Oh, yes, sorry. Oh, about international cooperation, it was stressed yesterday by Tuva, but we have a lot of kind of possibilities, and they are the All Atlantic Ocean Alliance that I have taken part, the Belém Statement that was signed by Brazilian government, and here is a project that I take part in. The Aquavita is financed by Horizon 2020, and we make an interaction with our sustainable aquaculture network that was totally Brazilian and was financed by the different agents like CNPq, FINEP, FAPESP, and others. And we are in very high level in sustainability than the European people. We have bank of data, they don't have bank of data. We have a methodology very well developed that was introduced by European Commission now to assess the blue economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Wagner Valente, especially for bringing this successful case where we can connect all SDGs. I guess sometimes we talk about that in theory, but it's very rare we can see some practical case studies, and you show that as that is possible. I was watching your lecture and see how many goods we have in the oceans, and not always, or just in a few opportunities, everyone can get the benefits from the ocean equally, and you show us a case where we can also distribute the benefits equally. So I'm gonna ask then and give the floor to Eleonora Veron from CONICET, and then please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hello, good day everyone. I'm Eleonora Veron, I'm geographer from Mar del Plata University and CONICET. I'm from coordinator team with together Juan Emilio Sala, Macarena Baliñas, Germán Garcia, and Juliana Sócrates to marine spatial planning process to Pampa Sur initiative. I would like to thank the organizers. Alex, thank you, and for this invitation, and especially Pampa Sur Initiative and Juan Emilio Sala for this opportunity. And today, thank you especially to the public education and scientific system to my country, especially today. I will do my best in these minutes of presentation so that we can share ideas about marine spatial planning, its importance, and the need for maritime space as diverse and rich as ours. To continue with my colleagues' ideas in relation to the thematic proposals for this panel, we know that marine ecosystems are highly biodiversity systems that provide service, enabling the development of numerous human uses and activities. For instance, Argentina's maritime space, with its exclusive economic zone and continental shelf, occupy almost twice as much territory as the Earth's surface. Commercial fisheries, hydrocarbon basins, and mineral deposits of great economic relevance are present in this area. These factors have promoted the development of use and activities. This has generated conflicts between actors and the ecosystems that need to be managed. MSP is an integrative process to address the increasing demand for maritime space from traditional and emerging sectors while preserving the proper functioning of ecosystem systems in marine ecosystems. The key benefits of MSP include reduction of conflicts between sectors and creation of synergies between different activities, investment generation, increased cross-border cooperation between countries to develop activities, as well as ecosystem management, protection and preservation of the environmental through early identification of impact and opportunities for multiple use of space. There are also other benefits to MSP is that puts the sea and ocean on the political agenda and helps to raise stakeholders' awareness of important maritime issues. In addition, there are many indirect benefits resulting from systematic data and information collection and stakeholder processes. This is achieved through increased knowledge and the collection of data and information. The MSP process in Argentina is carried out by Pampa Azul. The Pampa Azul initiative, which is an interministerial and interinstitutional program, focuses on the South Atlantic Ocean with the objective of explaining the maritime issues at the center of the country's development agenda. PACE and main objective is to research, conserve, and sustainably use marine and coastal resources in the Argentina Sea. One of its horizontal areas of work is marine spatial planning and biodiversity conservation, which has among its goal to advance the design and implementation of the MSP in different areas in our sea. As a result, Pampa Azul has chosen 2 zones to be taken as pilot areas to carry out an MSP process. The northern Argentina basins, located al north of the continental shelf, and the Austral Malvina West basin situated to the south. These 2 areas of the territory to advance in the exploration and future exploitation of offshore hydrocarbons. A new activity in the area has adverse reaction from civil society. In these areas, 2 objectives were made for development of the MSP process. Firstly, analyze current and potential compatibilities and incompatibilities of use and activities, as well as its relationship with the ecosystem. Secondly, analyze their management status. The aim of this process is to generate short, medium, and long-term technical proposals in the pilot areas. In addition, it's wanted to propose an institutional arrangement, instruments, and the necessary resources to address current scenarios and anticipate future ones, all in line with the concept of the sustainability. In 2022, the MSP process was introduced and a roadmap was established throughout the next steps. On the slide, you can see the steps and activities to be carried out in the MSP process. For that, the following steps were taken. Firstly, the definition of activities carried out in CAN and AUS MLO, along with sectorial analysis. Secondly, the compilation of data on use and activities from governmental institutions and agencies. Thirdly, meetings were held with each ministry and agency where the proposal was presented and interaction took place to jointly define the correct data for sectorial analysis. As a result, based on the analysis carried out, sectorial reports were prepared, which are currently being received by the relevant authorities. In addition, progress has been made the analysis of ecosystem conditions on both pilot areas. This process involved determining relevant zones within each of them based on their biological and ecological aspects. To define and evaluate these areas, the workshop for the identification of ecologically and biologically significant marine areas was carried out. The workshop had the participation of 25 specialists from across the country representing different disciplines and specialties. During the workshop, the importance of each zone in the CAN and AUS MLO basin was evaluated. The MSP pay process is currently in development, and in this phase, of interpretation of the data provided by institution and analysis of the result of the workshop. An analysis of the current and historical situation of the two study areas is being carried out together with the analysis of the data provided during the EPSA identification workshop. Considering the aspect mentioned regarding MSP and the Argentine experience, the issues necessary to strengthen, cooperate, and generate workspace can be related to the following gaps. Firstly, it's crucial to establish effective coordination mechanisms to ensure that the stockholders and the actors are represented and engaged in the process. In addition, this also opens the way or possibility for the development of cross-border experience, for example, between Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, as pilot areas for MSP project. Secondly, effective consultation and participation mechanisms must be established to engage local community, fishermen, maritime industries, and other stockholders, and a lot of society. Thirdly, it's necessary to promote the participation of multi- and inter- and transdisciplinary teams involving specialists from all disciplines. Having adequate data and information about the marine environment and its resources to support the planning process is essential. Additionally, the availability of high-resolution data at various scales, including the before-mentioned types of data in the MSP process, is crucial. Working to generate an integrated indicator system to guide maritime space uses and biodiversity, socioeconomic governance indicators, and furthermore, workspace needs to be generated for this purpose. In relation to the above, it's important to conduct joint scientific studies to enhance understanding of oceanographic, biological, socioeconomic, and governance process. In this regard, it's beneficial to exchange research, technologies, and resources to strengthen scientific and technical capacities in both regions and promote long-term collaboration. This might include staff training and development of planning tools and methodologies. Last but not least, it's essential to have the appropriate financial capacity to support long-term implementation and monitoring, as well as an effective marine spatial planning process. In conclusion, it's truly necessary to develop MSP process in our ocean space. While the challenges are a lot, so are the opportunities. Let's advance toward a more resilient, prosperous, and united South Atlantic Ocean. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Eleonora. Very inspiring talk. We mentioned yesterday, I guess was Alex mentioned, that Brazil just started formally our MSP process. We have started in the south, and now it's going up in the southeast, north, and north. And I guess we're going to have so many lessons to exchange. We did a paper with other colleagues on this topic, and we get the same conclusions that we got in the end. So yeah, let's talk about collaboration on MSP. So I will invite here Silvina Romano from CONICET, and I will ask you to introduce yourself as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Silvina Romano. I'm economist, and I came from Tierra del Fuego. So I will show something related with Tierra del Fuego. But first, I want to say thank you to everyone that organized this event. Alexander, thank you very much. And from Pampa Azul, Juan Emilio, for giving me this opportunity. So, as my colleague Eleonora stressed the importance of carefully planning and organizing activities related to our oceans. It is crucial that we protect marine ecosystem while also promoting sustainable economic practices. Particularly, Argentina's exclusive economic zone has a treasure chest of natural resources. I will speak specifically about fishing. So, I guess ecosystem approach to fisheries give us a very good approach in order to understand the ecosystem, offers a holistic framework for evaluating economic activities within our economic exclusive zone through a lens of sustainability. So, first of all, well, this is the Argentinian economic zone. I will speak first about industrial fishing. In our quest for an effective marine policy, it is crucial to identify the gaps that hinder progress. By addressing this gap, we can foster a deeper commitment to marine governance and sustainability development. Let me show some key ideas about industrial fishing. First of all, it's necessary to understand the complex governance landscape. The management of Argentinians industrial fishing involves a complex governance system, integrating international agreement, national laws, and provincial regulation. So understanding and navigating this intricate framework is essential for effective resource management and sustainability development. Then we need to understand the evolution of these governance machines, in particular in Argentina, by examining the proceedings of the Federal Fisheries Council that is established by the Federal Fishing Regimen, one national law. We can trace the evolution of governance machine, fishing volume, fishing permits, by catch and discard. We are already working on translating this document into a system of indicator. And then we have challenge and opportunity. The industrial fishing face various challenges, including environmental sustainability, competition with other economic activities, and international tensions. Illegal fishing, proximity to the Antarctic zone, and the unresolved territory dispute over the Islas Malvinas, South Georgia, and South Sandwich Island exacerbate this challenge. However, there are also opportunities for local development and expansion of production chain, proving effective governance machines are in place. Let me show you. This is a map, a conceptual map we make to understand the governance of industrial fishing. Understanding the governance not as good or bad. We don't want to say that. We try to understand the relationship between institutions, national government, local government, and understanding that each of these actors have different interests, economical, environmental, different things. So I guess it's very important to understand this relationship in order to think about the development of the sector. So let me say some gaps that I can address in this sector. First of all, to have a system of indicator. To make informed decisions and craft effective policy will require a robust system of indicators. This system should centralize and analyze data relevant to our marine activities, offering trends, challenge, and opportunity. By implementing such a system, we are going to increase the capacity for understand evidence based for doing policy in this sector. Then, understanding the land impact of industrial fishing. The industrial fishing represents a significant economic opportunity. Its impact on land ecosystem is often overlooked. It's imperative to study and understand how these activities affect coastal community, territorial diversity, and ecosystem health. And then I guess we have to work or still work in building productive capacity to build skill and capacity of coastal community is essential for maximizing the potential of marine resources. We need to establish training programs that allow us to improve the integration of factory ship activities with the land-based activities. So it's very important to increase the human capital along the marine coast. Then a completely different sector that we are working on is the artisanal fishing. And I will give some ideas or things that we are working on. Understanding that artisanal fishing is characterized by small-scale operation and localized approach, plays a vital role in sustainable region and local economies. Unlike industrial fishing, which operate in a large scale, artisanal fishing primarily consists of informal small-scale enterprise operating in coastal waters. Despite the smaller volume, artisanal fishing is essential for generating employment and fostering local productivity network. So, some key points in this sector. Understand the diverse of actor and object that have the sector. Artisanal fishing involves a diversity of actors, ranging from individual fisher in a small boat to cooperative group operating along the coast. The diversity extent of the values and objective of participants reflects a range of culture, social, and economic consideration. Then, this sector is very important in local economy. While artisanal fishing may not rival to industrial fishing in terms of volume, the impact on regional and local economy is significant. So it serves as a crucial source of employment and income for coastal community, supporting livelihoods and sustainable local economies. Moreover, artisanal fishing contribute to the development of local productive network, fostering economic resilience and community cohesion. And is a sector that coexists formality and informality. Artisanal fishing is characterized by a unique blend of formality and informality. While some operations may adhere to formal regulation and license requirement, many artisanal fishers operate within informal framework, navigating a complex regulation landscape. This coexistence of formal and informal practices adds layers of complexity to the sector, but also reflects its adaptability. So, in the same map I showed before, this is the governance of artisanal fishing that is completely different. And the thing is that here the fisheries are sometimes one person that work when they need, they don't have time, and it's completely different to have a relationship with many institutions when you are only one person. No? So the industrial fishery and artisanal fishing is completely different, but they have to have the same relationship with many institutions, at least in Argentina. So, some critical gaps to the sector. Keeping the information up to date. Access to accurate and timely information is essential for effective decision-making in fisheries management. However, gaps in data collection and analyzing often impede our ability to understand and respond to changing dynamic in marine ecosystem. Then, ensuring continuity in participatory process. In the artisanal fishing, I guess that the key is the participatory, and it's very important to have process that permit to do participatory process with fishery as part of the process. As we say, the informality is, I guess, very important to have a process of professionalization of the economic activity to promote sustainable practice and engaging profitability. So it's essential to invest in skill development, technological adaptation, business management practice to improve efficiently and competitiveness. And then sometimes it's very difficult to find fresh fish in tierra, at least in Tierra del Fuego. We have the fisher, we have the ocean, but it's difficult. So I guess it's very important to develop a marketing chain for fresh home fish, understanding the different SARs and connecting fishers with markets and consumers. So Then Juan Emilio is going to show some federalization of the trainee process in Pampa Azul, but I guess is a pending agenda, the social science and the human science related with the ocean to understand different seats. I guess oceanographic and biological is very important, but social science are important as well to understand this complexity. So I guess it's important to develop scholarship to pre-graduate, graduate, doctorate, and postdoctorate as well in different disciplines. And as I showed, this is part of an agenda that we are having in Tierra del Fuego, but trying to work with all the oceanographic littoral in Argentina, and working in different projects, particularly in industrial fishing and artisanal fishing in a participatory process. So that is, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Silvina, for your presentation. I would like to invite everyone to the table so we can address question and answers. So we have a very interesting panel, and it was very good to highlight the importance of social science and the interdisciplinary and disciplinary backgrounds that goes together as two rivers flowing into one direction. And having said that, I would like to ask if you have any questions to the panelists.
We are very clear.
Was that very complex?
Yeah, thank you very much for these presentations. I was wondering why we call it blue economy while most of it is green, basically, as far as I understood, since it's a primary production which somehow brings everything down. So I understand the parallel with the blue, with the sea, but in terms of really the functionality, it's more green than blue, isn't it? Maybe I'm not clear enough. You call it blue economy for the sea, but most of the primary production is the driver of all the carbon sequestration and fish production. And so
I understand now, because this is the name that are used worldwide.
No, that's why I was a bit provocative, because in essence, we had a nice presentation about the mangrove, but again, there also this is more green than blue.
Yes, but all the economic wage that we will receive, that process or product that you make money and you have ocean enrolled is called the blue economy. And this $1.5 trillion involve all, including the carbon credit, for instance. I suppose that it was not computed yet because it's only incipient. But all the maritime and oceanic activities, including tourism, including transportation, and all of them. And among them, there is the use of live organisms. And among the use of live organisms, there is some kind of systems that you can call bioeconomy, that have these four characteristics. Normally is a native species, restorative process, and sustainable. The process should be sustainable, and we need to provide some innovation. This is what are calling blue economy by European Union, United States, Canada, and some other place in the world. Okay.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Just adding, I think for me it's even more simple. It's just to make that different from the green and terrestrial economy.
All right.
It's just to call it blue because it's related to coastal and all resources related to ocean and marine environment. That for me it's that simple, putting more social understanding and just to make really that distinction between what we have been calling from the history and now we have been giving more attention to marine environment. So the blue it's related to coastal and resources related to marine environment. That
I fully understand that, but my point is that since it's still primary production driven, we are in a finite system. So I was quite happy to hear that the blue economy means that you have to be sustainable and recycled.
Yes.
My question is how you make sure that it will be as such.
Oh,
Since most of the economy is based on the paradigm which is infinite growth in a finite system.
oh, there is a lot of kind of system of production of business. There is different business. Some are sustainable, some are not. And those that are not sustainable are part of blue economy, are not part of the bioeconomy. Okay, this is the difference. Bioeconomy is a part of the blue economy. And including rivers, by analogy, people are calling blue economy or blue carbon also the carbon and activities in the water. Like the GDS 14. In some places you read life below water, and in others you read ocean.
So, ahí está. Sorry, I want to add something. The blue economy, bioeconomy is completely different framework to the traditional economy, that the traditional framework cannot understand the limit of the biological system. So you can produce and produce and produce and don't think about the environmental because it's not part of the analysis. The blue economy, bioeconomy, there are a lot of framework, but this point of view understand the economic as a part of the biological system. So the limit is a key, and the garbage and different things as part of the system that in the traditional economy you cannot understand it that way.
Any more questions?
Yes, I have. Edmar Moraes of Ilha Hub of Innovation. I used to joke that green is great, blue is better, right? So just an expression for us that we are all related to the ocean. Here in São Paulo coast, we developed the Corridor Azul. A mí me gusta mucho el Pampa Azul. So I love the Pampa Azul name. So I would like to provoke a kind of extension of this corridor, because last week I was in south of Brazil, extending to the south. This is an initiative, institutional, governmental. I mean, there is no protagonism of just one institution here. So how we can extend that to Tierra del Fuego allá en Argentina?
I guess now we are in a very, as they say yesterday and today, a very difficult system. The scientific system is very in a complex moment. I guess Tierra del Fuego has a lot of particularity. It's in the end of the South America, it's in the end of the country, near to the Antarctic, and it's an isla. So they have a lot, because I'm part of Tierra del Fuego, a lot of particularity. And we need to improve the system in order to be able to participate in different processes. In this moment, it's very difficult to speak about that because we are not having a good moment for the universities and scientific system in general. But I guess improving the building capability in this sector. We are an isla and we are not looking the ocean. Now, in the last year, thank you to Pampa Azul, we started, I'm an economist, I was working in natural research, but I was working with the forest, with the difference, not in the ocean. The last year, I start to think about this and work this. I guess we have a lot of work to do in order to understand that we are part of an isla and its particularity. I don't know if I answered the question, but I guess we have a lot to do. So if you want to help us, yes.
Any more questions? No? Me? No, I have some points that I put together from our talks, but do you have any question? Do you, Deborah, Wagner, do you have any question for the other speakers?
I want something to point out. We are in a very, promising moment to start our marine special planning in Brazil. And you guys from Argentina and even our colleagues from Uruguay, they are a step ahead of this process. Mm-hmm. So I think that it is quite important for us to sum up efforts in this regard, since we have lots of lessons to learn from each other and lots of resources that we share as well. So I think if we can consider that within PROASA scope would be a great opportunity for us from South America, especially from South countries, yes, to work together, because most of our modeling is in general and approaching coming from the north or from the north hemisphere, and with the modeling and the governance approach, they are not really applied directly for us. So I think that for us, stretch that relationship in terms of all other potential PROASA topics that we may come up, but particularly in marine spatial planning, it's going to be a really advanced in terms of South and ocean South research.
Thank you, Deborah. We have to finish by 12:30, so I just took note some points from our talks that I guess are some topics that we can use for building PROASA program. And I guess all the talks here bring this importance of collaboration among areas and actors and right holders. I guess Silvina showed us very clear that the governance changes a lot when we talk about different sectors, and all those sectors and actors are using and relating to each other in one ocean. So we have to take care of that. And work with our peers in a really interdisciplinary perspective, not a multidisciplinary, which is good, but not enough anymore to address the challenge we have in the ocean. So natural and social science should be working together. So I'm glad we have a very interdisciplinary panel here to discuss this. We have also, and this is a big challenge, I know FAPESP has been trying different approaches, and this is one to include non-academic in our research teams. And I'm referring here to coastal communities, but also managers. So FAPESP had some calls where we could invite those traditional communities to part of our research team and really do research with us. And that would be like not build our research based on our knowledge, but build knowledge with them. And this makes a lot of difference when we are producing interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary knowledge. If we keep doing this just using their knowledge, we're going to be producing colonial science, which there is no room for novel. So I guess we have to change that. And FAPESP is in the best position to do it. We also have to challenge gender equity and fight and understand that still women are globally around like 40% of ocean research, according to the Global Ocean Research Report from 2020. And consider the 2030 Agenda, Sustainable Development Goals 5 and 14. I guess Wagner showed that very important topic, how we can relate the gender equity with our ocean projects. Sometimes we think this is not, there's no anything related to us, but there is, and we can see here in PROASA that we have to create a more transformative ocean science, and we need to guarantee or at least promote retention of women in marine science to avoid the leaky pipeline, which is a big reality in Brazil, and we have to change that. And we can and we should study this. And we also have to understand our role as a scientist in reducing inequality in this very unjust system, especially because PROASA is growing from Brazil in building this collaboration. So we are talking from the Global South characteristic, and I guess our panelists show that very well. There were some initiatives that were presented here that was marine spatial planning, blue carbon, sustainable aquaculture, ecosystem approach, participation, inter and transdisciplinary, different actors and right holders. And I guess those kind of projects, perspectives are the ones that need everyone to be together to solve like a puzzle. It's very difficult to have just one discipline to solve those kind of puzzles. And I guess the ocean teaches that everything is connected. And as someone mentioned in previous panel, the time is running and we may have still lots of uncertainties. So there is room to research, advance our research, our perspective, but still we have enough knowledge to take better decisions. And why we are not doing, I guess this was a question from the last panel, and maybe we have to reevaluating the actions we have been done in the past to improve and to have room for novelty. And for doing that, we need to be, we need to be more bold in our research projects. So we are here today to challenge the past, innovate for the future, and doing a better job in doing this in a more fair and just environment. So I guess it's a big challenge, and I will not drop this big challenge for one person, right, Alex? But this is a collective endeavor that we should take care together. So thank you for inviting me to moderate this very inspiring and interesting panel. Thank you very much, my colleagues, to be here.
Exciting moments, discussing important things. So thank you very much to all you that shared your knowledge, your experience, your thoughts, your dreams with us. It's important to note that we have a big, an important role to produce the science behind all of this. We are not supposed to do, at least in Brazil, marine spatial planning. It's a government-led process. But we need to provide the best science, the best knowledge we can have to the process, and understand what are the next challenges, the frontiers of knowledge that we need to advance. But there is a very important question behind that, which is not what we can do, but who will benefit from all the effort we are putting in the ocean to make it more productive or be productive in a sustainable way. What does it mean, as Jill asked us? What does it mean? And the discussion between green and blue economy, it's very interesting because we can make this connection between land and sea, but we are in a process to understand how we bring comprehensiveness to the economy in a transition for a more industrial or global economy to a more local one, in a transition that is being conducted by the UN system when it brings to the table. And in the end, I think we need to stress that. And I would like only to say that 1 month ago, I was in New York in a meeting with UN Global Compact, so companies. And then I said, what I'm going to say here, because I'm a biologist trying to understand this complexity. And I said, ocean economy is so important that the dollar bill should be printed in blue. And then they liked that. I don't know why. You remember that? Hama was there. and that's the point, how we communicate there and how we bring comprehensiveness to the process so that the people that need to benefit from that, it's important. Should be in the spot. So that's the message. Now we are going to feed our stomach and brains again. And we are returning in 1 hour and a half, okay, for the next session. So thank you very much and see you later. There was some suggestions outside about restaurants in the nearby. If you don't know the region and would like to have some suggestions, there is some there.